Hello, I'm Hank Quentz. Today I have with me fellow author Mark Cain. Now, Mark is the author of the popular series of books called The Circles in Hell. He's about to publish the sixth book in the series called Beelzebub, a memoir. Mark, let's begin by telling us a bit about yourself.
Um, I was born, I think, although I don't remember that. But the first 8 years of my life, I was a service brat, and then we settled, and I had a fairly traditional childhood. Then I went to college in Columbia, New York, and then I was graduate school at the University of Virginia and the University of Chicago. And then I started a career in higher education, first as a librarian, and then as a chief information officer for a couple of liberal arts colleges in Ohio. And then I took early retirement in part so that I could write. And I've been doing that for a while now. I've got, as you say, I've got 7 books published, soon to be 8. 6 of them are part of this series, and I have a short story published here and there as well.
Okay, so about this series, why don't you tell us about it? What kicked it off, and how'd you get this idea? And tell us where it's, what happened in the series.
Okay, so I was working on an epic fantasy series, and I was walking with my wife on the beach in Florida, and I guess I was in kind of a crabby mood, and I said, I'm not really feeling very epic right now. I said, I'm really feeling more snarky than anything else. And then I started talking, and about a 10-minute period, I came up with this basic concept for a differently realized version of hell, which is based more upon things that we personally dislike. It's kind of I wouldn't call it a mundane hell, because it's not. It's kind of wacky and fun, but it's not your typical fire and brimstone and spikes and iron maidens and whips and seas of thorns. They're there in that hell, but it's really taking the everyday things that drive us crazy and magnifying them to kind of horrific proportions. So in the case of the protagonist of the first 5 books, he hated doing home improvement projects, and so in life. So when he goes to hell, he ends up being hell's handyman for eternity. And so he has all the little irritations that go with, doing handyman stuff, like you're looking for a Phillips and you've got a flathead, and and the thing breaks off in your hand and all that kind of stuff. So Circles in Hell is a humorous fantasy series, and it's based very loosely on Dante's Inferno. There are 9 circles in hell. And then there's also a level which we call Gates level, which is where the pearly gates and the gates to hell are located, and St. Peter's sits there. A couple of things to know about the series. First, these are not dark comedies. I decided to sort of go against type. And so instead, I made my hell kind of a bright comedy. And that's reflected in the cover art of the books. And the colors are bright, and the drawings are kind of like something out of a comic strip. And so the covers communicate immediately that these are bright comedies. The humor's broad. I used puns, visual humor, playing with the language, quirky characters. I think that the dialogue is fast and I hope witty. That's the idea anyway. And there are a lot of pop culture references, especially to old movies. And then the people that are in hell, of course, are everyday people, but they're also famous people, famous historical people. So you might meet a dead movie star, or you might meet an industrial magnate from the Gilded Age, or a Roman emperor. Everyone's pretty much fair game in this series. So the other thing about, I guess I've talked a little bit about these irritants that drive us crazy in modern life, and they got to kind of hellish proportions. Part of that is bureaucracy, the paperwork, rules and regulations, some of the little stuff in modern life that drives us all crazy. So if it irritates you, you're probably going to find a magnified version in my hell. And I guess one other thing I would say about the series is that the devils and demons who torture the damned have twisted senses of humor. Their first role is to torment the damned, but their second role is to try to make it funny. They like to entertain themselves at our expense or at the expense of the damned. And so that's sort of the character of the books. They've done well. All the first 5 have been Kindle bestsellers in their genres of satire and humorous fantasy, and they're all available in ebook and paperback and audiobook.
All right, well, I've read them, and I have to agree that they're not dark. They're light and funny. I really enjoyed them. I especially enjoyed the Devils and their struggle with managing hell. There's always a lot of good stuff going on in there. Okay, so you got another one coming out. What's different about this one?
This one really is a departure from the first 5. The first 5 was actually a long story arc focused on one main character, a fellow by the name of Steve, who's the handyman in chief for hell. This book is really the ultimate backstory for the first 5. It covers prior to creation all the way up to the present. So I say it's over 14 billion years in the making. But it's very different. The character who's telling the story is now Beelzebub rather than Steve. It's still told in the first person. The humor is very similar. And actually it makes sense because Beelzebub and Steve have always had a connection. And in my mind, Beelzebub thinks Steve reminds him of himself. So from the perspective of Beelzebub, we get to see the creation of the universe, the adoration of the angels by the angels of the Almighty. We get to see the creation of the universe, the fall from heaven, some Bible stories, the creation of hell. We get to meet some mythical characters who are not part of Judaism or Christianity or Islam. We get to meet Hades, for instance, and some god from the Indian pantheon. And we get to enjoy some key points in history that have an effect, or at least in my view, had an effect on the development and the spread of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And so I think of this as this little book, only about 80,000 words. I call it a comic historical novel, or maybe a hysterical historical. But again, while the book is different from the first 5, I think readers of the first 5 will recognize the style and the humor that's told that's used in telling the story.
It's true. I've read it. I've read almost all of it. And besides the humor and stuff, you also get some history lessons thrown in. I'm currently reading about the Spanish reconquering of, knocking Islam out of Spain. So I pretty much knew the story, but you're brushing up on it and getting some new facts about it and a different slant on what really happened, which is pretty good. I like to enjoy that. So good. So is this the end of the story then? Now that you get written the backstory, is this it? The series is over?
It's not. I searched my soul for a while, if I wanted to continue this series. And I realized that there were lots of stories to tell from lots of different perspectives, and that I decided to continue the books. And I hope to continue at the rate of about 2 a year. And so what I would like to do, Steve is a very popular character, and I will come back to Steve. I will always come back to Steve because people like him so much. He's also so much fun to write. But I've told a lot of his story. So he'll show up, like if you've read the Terry Pratchett Discworld series, there's a character by the name of Sam Vines, who is a chief of police, and he shows up again and again and again. So Steve will continue to show up, but I'd like to tell stories from the perspective of some of the other characters. I'd like to do team-ups, pulling a bunch of characters together and for them to have somewhat equal roles in the story. So for example, the next book, and I'm shooting for a December release, it may kick into January. But the next book is called the League of Unusual Denizens, and it's going to have Steve in it. It's going to have 3 or 4 or 5 of his friends and 1 or 2 of his enemies as a motley people trying to solve a very large problem. And Boo, who's a character that has been in all 6 books and is a very popular character, will be in the book. If I didn't have Boo in every single book, I think I'd be in a lot of trouble. So Boo is there. I'm also starting a series of novellas. They'll be complete stories. They'll just be in shorter format, about 20,000 words. I'll sell them for virtually nothing. But just to be able to tell more stories from different characters' perspectives. And the next one, that one I hope I'll have out in October, is St. Peter Takes a Vacation. So Peter will take a vacation. So in short, this is an open-ended series, sort of like Terry Pratchett's Discworld, and it will continue to expand, and it will develop and explore the universe that readers have come to know in the first 5 books. But one thing I will try to keep constant is the bright, broad, and comic elements that I use. The silliness should stay the same, because that's, for better or worse, that's kind of me. So.
Yeah.
But if you're going to write comedy, you might as well,
Yeah. When I was reading this your new book, I was coming in mind. A couple of things popped into my mind. One was Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, and another one which was I got an idea a couple of times. That there was similarities to it. Is Management Style of Supernatural Beings by Tom Holt. That is outrageously funny, and there is some similarities between what you have there and Tom Holt's book.
I've not read that one. I've read a lot of Tom Holt, and I'm a great admirer. I love his
we
stuff.
have that in common. I think I've read almost every one of his books.
Yeah, I'll have to pull that one out.
I think this might be one of his latest ones.
Okay.
And it's one of his best.
So that's good. Yeah, he's one of my favorite writers.
Yeah. So, anything else to add, or can we wrap it up?
I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And I hope that you checked out the books and enjoyed them.
Okay, great. Okay, so we'll sign off now. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.